When my daughter-in-law told me to leave the house, I smiled instead of crying. I nodded my head. I picked up my small bag. And I thanked her. I still remember how my hands were shaking, even though I tried my best to keep them steady. Inside, my heart felt like it was breaking into quiet pieces. But on my face, there was only a soft smile. A tired smile. The kind of smile you wear when you do not want anyone to see your pain. I walked out of the house slowly, closing the door behind me without making a sound. I did not want to disturb anyone. Not my son, not his wife, not even the silence that had already settled between us long ago. As I stood outside, the evening air felt heavy. The sky was turning gray, and a light rain had started to fall. I looked back at the house one last time. That house where I had once laughed, cooked, prayed, and waited every night for my son to come home. That house no longer felt like mine. I whispered to myself, "It's okay." But it was not okay. Not at all. I had carried my son in my body for 9 months. I had held him through fevered nights. I had skipped meals so he could eat. I had prayed for him more times than I could count. And now, I was standing outside his home, holding a small bag, wondering where I would sleep that night. People say time changes everything. But sometimes, time does not change things. Sometimes, it slowly takes them away. I did not blame my daughter-in-law. That might surprise you. Many people expect anger in stories like this. But anger never lived in my heart. Only confusion, and sadness, and a deep, quiet question that kept repeating in my mind. How did my son forget me? I am not telling this story to shame him. I am not telling it to make anyone choose sides. I am telling it because this is my truth. And maybe, somewhere out there, another mother needs to hear that she is not alone. My name does not matter much anymore. People stopped calling it with warmth years ago. To my neighbors, I am just an old woman. To my relatives, I am a responsibility passed around with polite excuses. And to my son, I am someone he once loved deeply, but no longer knows how to include in his life. But there was a time when I was everything to him. I remember the day he was born. The hospital room smelled of medicine and hope. I held him close, and he stopped crying the moment he heard my voice. The nurse smiled and said, "He knows you already." I believed her. I believed we would always know each other. When his father passed away early, it was just the two of us. I worked small jobs. I stitched clothes. I cleaned houses. I did whatever I could. Every night, I would count my coins and plan the next day. And every morning, I would wake him up gently, kiss his forehead, and tell him that life would be better. He used to hold my hand tightly when we crossed the road. "Don't let go, Amma," he would say. "I won't," I promised. I kept that promise. He did not. As he grew older, he became my pride. Teachers praised him. Neighbors admired him. I would sit quietly in the back, listening, my heart full. I never needed thanks. Seeing him succeed was enough. When he got married, I told myself things would change. Everyone said so. A wife brings new priorities, they said. I understood. I welcomed his wife with an open heart. I cooked her favorite food. I gave her my old gold bangles. I made space in my cupboards and in my life. At least, I tried to. But slowly, I felt myself becoming smaller in that house. My words mattered less. My presence felt heavy. Conversations would stop when I entered the room. Decisions were made without asking me. Meals were eaten without waiting for me. I told myself not to be sensitive. I told myself this was normal. I told myself love does not always look the same. Still, some nights, I would sit alone in my room, listening to the sounds of my son laughing with his wife in the other room. I would smile in the dark, telling myself he was happy. That was all that mattered. That should have been enough. But the heart does not listen to logic. It listens to silence. The silence grew louder each day. Until one afternoon, when my daughter-in-law stood in front of me, her voice calm but firm. She did not shout. She did not insult me. That would have been easier to handle. Instead, she spoke politely, like someone discussing weather or groceries. She said, "Amma, it would be better if you stayed somewhere else." Just one sentence. Soft, clear, final. I looked at her face, searching for hesitation. There was none. I looked toward my son, hoping he would speak. He did not. His eyes stayed on the floor, like a child who knows something is wrong but does not want to fix it. That moment changed something inside me forever. I realized then that forgetting does not happen suddenly. It happens slowly, in small moments, in quiet choices, in unspoken words. I packed my bag with care. I folded my clothes neatly. I left nothing behind that could cause trouble. I touched the doorframe of the room I once slept in. I whispered a prayer for the house. And then I walked out. As I walked down the street, rain soaking my shawl, I felt strangely calm. Empty, light, heavy, all at once. I did not know where I was going. But I knew I could not stay. That night, sitting alone under a small shelter, listening to rain hit the ground, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not loudly, not bitterly, just quietly, tears sliding down, carrying years of unspoken pain. And in that silence, I began to remember everything. This story is not about a bad son. It is about a forgotten bond. It is about love that changed shape. And it is about a mother who learned, too late, that giving everything does not always mean you will be remembered. This is how it began. And this is only the beginning. Before everything fell apart, our life was simple. Not perfect. Just simple. And sometimes, simple is enough to feel safe. After my husband died, the house felt too big and too quiet. His slippers stayed near the door for months. His cup remained on the shelf, untouched. At night, I would wake up suddenly, reaching for him, forgetting he was gone. Then I would sit up, breathe slowly, and remind myself that life does not stop for grief. My son was still young then. Too young to understand loss fully. He would ask, "When will Baba come back?" I would pull him close and say, "He is watching us from far away." That answer had to be enough for both of us. From that day on, I became both mother and father. I learned to be strong in ways I never imagined. I learned how to hide tears, how to stretch money, how to smile when my body felt tired. Every decision I made was for my son. What to eat, where to live, how to survive. We moved to a smaller house closer to the market. I took stitching work from neighbors. Some days I cleaned homes. Some days I cooked for small events. My hands were always busy. My mind never rested. But every evening, when my son came home from school and told me about his day, I felt rich. He would sit at the small wooden table, swinging his legs, talking without stopping. I would listen like it was the most important story in the world. Because to me, it was. At night, we would eat together on the floor. Simple food, rice, lentils, sometimes vegetables, sometimes just bread and tea. He never complained. If I apologized for the food, he would say, "It's okay, Amma. It's tasty." Those words gave me strength. As years passed, he grew taller, quieter, more thoughtful. He started helping me with small things. Carrying groceries, fixing the light, counting money. I saw his father in him sometimes. The same serious eyes, the same silence. I often worried about the future, about his education, about marriage, about whether I would be a burden one day. But I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself that love would protect us. When he finished his studies and got a job, I cried that day too. Happy tears. I remember ironing his shirt carefully, my hands shaking. He stood in front of the mirror, nervous and proud. "Amma," he said softly, "everything I am is because of you." I believed that sentence would last forever. When he told me he wanted to get married, my heart felt two things at the same time. Joy and fear. Joy because he had found someone. Fear because I knew life was about to change. I met his future wife for the first time on a quiet afternoon. She was polite, well-spoken, confident. She greeted me with respect. I remember thinking she was different from me, educated in a different way, raised with comforts I never had. But I also thought that differences could live together. At the wedding, I stayed busy, making sure guests were comfortable, checking food, helping wherever needed. I barely sat down. People praised me, saying, "You raised him well." I smiled and nodded, my feet aching, my heart full. When they came home as a married couple, I welcomed her properly. I gave her the biggest room. I moved my things into the smaller one without complaint. I told myself this was her home now too. In the beginning, things were peaceful. We cooked together sometimes. We spoke politely. We smiled. But there was always a distance I could not cross. Like a thin wall made of silence. I noticed small changes first. My son no longer asked me before making plans. He would say, "We decided," instead of, "I decided." Meals were cooked to their taste. I adjusted. I always adjusted. If I woke up early to pray, I did it quietly so I would not disturb them. If I felt unwell, I stayed silent so I would not be a problem. I started eating less, talking less, asking less. I thought this was maturity. I thought this was love. Sometimes, my daughter-in-law would correct me gently. "Amma, we do things differently now." I would nod and say, "Of course." I wanted peace in the house. I believed peace came from sacrifice. So I sacrificed. Again and again. My son grew busier. Work, friends, responsibilities. When I tried to talk, he would listen, but his mind seemed elsewhere. He was not cruel. That made it harder. He was just absent. At night, when everyone slept, I would sit by the window, listening to distant sounds. Cars passing, dogs barking, life moving on. I would remember the days when my son needed me for everything. And I would wonder when I stopped being needed. There were moments when I almost spoke up. When I wanted to say, "I feel alone." But the words stayed inside me. I did not want to sound weak. I did not want to create trouble. I told myself, this phase will pass. But phases do not pass when no one notices them. Slowly, I stopped feeling like I belonged. The house was full, yet I felt invisible. My presence felt like something tolerated, not welcomed. And the hardest part was pretending that everything was fine. One evening, I heard my daughter-in-law tell my son, "We need our own space." He did not disagree. He stayed silent. That silence hurt more than any argument could. I began to understand that love changes when new bonds are formed. But I never imagined I would be pushed aside so gently that no one would notice my fall. I did not hate anyone. I did not blame anyone. I only felt tired. Tired of being careful. Tired of being quiet. Tired of shrinking myself. And still, I stayed. Because mothers stay longer than they should. I stayed until the day staying was no longer an option. That day did not come with shouting. It came with calm voices and polite words. And it broke me more deeply than anger ever could. That is when the small cracks turned into something I could no longer ignore. And that is where the real pain began. The days after that conversation about space felt different. Nothing had changed on the outside, but inside the house, something had shifted. I could feel it in the air. In the way doors closed more firmly. In the way voices lowered when I walked into a room. I began to measure my steps. I walked softly, as if the floor might complain about my weight. I kept my things close, afraid of spreading myself too much. Even my prayers became quieter. I told myself this was temporary. I always told myself that. My daughter-in-law started managing the house completely. The kitchen, the bills, the plans. I stepped back without being asked. It felt safer that way. When I offered help, she would smile politely and say, "It's okay, Amma. You rest." Rest. That word sounds kind. But sometimes, it means, move aside. My son noticed none of this. Or maybe he noticed and chose not to see. He came home tired, ate, spoke a few words, and disappeared into his room. On weekends, they went out together. I stayed home. I told them to enjoy. Once, when they were leaving, he said, "We'll bring something for you." They forgot. I did not remind them. Small moments like that began to stack up inside me. Not heavy enough to complain about, but heavy enough to feel. One afternoon, I was folding clothes in my room when I heard raised voices from the living area. Not shouting, just tension. My daughter-in-law was upset about something. Money, I think, or plans. I could not hear clearly. Then I heard my name. "She interferes too much," she said. My hands froze. I listened without meaning to. Without wanting to. My son did not argue. He said softly, "She doesn't mean harm." That sentence should have comforted me. But it didn't. Because he did not say, "She is my mother." He did not say, "We will handle this together." He just explained me. Like a problem. That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering every time I had held my tongue. Every time I had stepped back. Every time I had chosen peace over honesty. I wondered when I became interference. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy chest. My body felt weak. I sat at the table, holding my tea, staring at nothing. My daughter-in-law asked if I was unwell. Her voice was normal, polite. I said, "Just tired." That answer became my habit. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I aged quietly in that house. My back hurt more. My legs felt heavy. But I kept moving. Slowly. Carefully. One day, I misplaced a document. It was important. When they couldn't find it, my daughter-in-law sighed. Not loudly. Just enough. "We need to be more organized," she said. My son nodded. I apologized. Over a piece of paper. That was the day something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a soft break. I stopped giving opinions. Even when asked. I stopped sitting in the living room. I stayed in my room, like a guest waiting to leave. Sometimes, I would hear them talking about the future. Trips. A new house. A different city. My name was never part of those conversations. I began to understand that I was not included in their tomorrow. Once, I gathered the courage to speak to my son. I waited until his wife was out. I sat across from him, my hands folded. "Are you happy?" I asked. He looked surprised. "Yes, Amma." "Why?" I nodded. "That's good." I wanted to say more. I wanted to say everything. But the words stayed trapped behind years of habit. He stood up, thinking the conversation was over. It was. Before it even began. Another evening, my daughter-in-law asked me if I could spend some time at a relative's place. Just for a while, she said. Things will be easier. Easier for whom? I told her I would think about it. She smiled with relief. That night, I packed a small bag without knowing why. Maybe my heart already knew. I remembered the days when my son would not sleep unless I was near. When my presence was comfort. When my voice mattered. Now, my silence was more useful than my words. The house did not feel cruel. That made it harder. Cruelty is easier to fight. This was calm removal, gentle pushing, polite distance. I started eating alone. I started praying for acceptance instead of understanding. I started asking myself if love has an expiration date. And then came the day when my daughter-in-law spoke clearly. Calmly. Finally. Amma, it would be better if you stayed somewhere else. No anger. No drama. Just a decision already made. I looked at my son. He did not meet my eyes. In that moment, I realized something painful. Forgetting does not require hatred. It only requires comfort. And he was comfortable without me. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped waiting to be chosen. Because I finally understood, I already had my answer. The day I walked away, and the night I finally let go. After my daughter-in-law spoke those words, the house felt unreal. Not broken, not loud, just unreal. It felt like I had stepped into a place that looked familiar but no longer recognized me. The walls were the same. The furniture was the same. The curtains still moved gently when the air came in through the window. But something important was missing. I was missing. I nodded slowly when she spoke. I did not argue. I did not ask why. I did not even ask for time. Not because I agreed with her, but because I could feel that the decision had already been made long before she spoke it out loud. I said, I understand. My voice was steady. That surprised me. I thought it would break. I thought it would shake or disappear. But it did not. It came out calm, almost polite, like I was agreeing to a small change, not the ending of my place in that home. I waited. I waited for my son. I waited for him to say something. Anything. Even a single word would have been enough. But he stayed quiet. That silence did something to me that words never could. It told me everything I needed to know. It told me that he had already accepted this. That he had already moved on in his heart. That my place in his life had slowly faded, and I had not noticed when it happened. Silence is strange. It does not shout. It does not accuse. But it stays. I turned and walked into my room. I closed the door gently behind me, as I always did. I did not want to make noise. I did not want to disturb anyone. Even then, I was careful. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I did not cry. I did not move. I just sat there, looking at my folded clothes, stacked neatly the way I had always kept them. That room had been my place of rest. My place of prayer. My place of quiet thoughts. And now, it felt like a room I had borrowed, not lived in. I looked around slowly, at the small marks on the wall, at the cupboard, at the corner where I used to sit and fold laundry. Each corner held a memory. Each memory felt heavy. I thought about how many years I had lived in that house. How many mornings I had woken up there. How many nights I had gone to sleep, listening to the sounds of my son breathing in the next room when he was young. And now, everything I owned would fit into one small bag. That thought did not make me angry. It made me quiet. I stood up and took out my bag. The same bag I used when visiting relatives. The same bag that now carried my entire life. I placed it on the bed and opened it carefully. I packed slowly, one sari at a time. I folded each one neatly, just like I had always done. I did not rush. I did not throw things inside. I did not want to leave behind disorder. I did not want to leave behind any sign that I had been upset. Each sari carried a memory. One I wore at a wedding. One I wore during a festival. One I wore on an ordinary day when nothing special happened, but life still felt full. I placed them gently into the bag. At the bottom, I placed my photographs. My husband's picture. My son as a child. Smiling. Carefree. Holding my finger. I looked at that picture for a long moment. His smile was wide. Honest. He looked like someone who trusted the world completely. I wondered when that trust changed. Or maybe it did not change. Maybe it just moved away from me. My hands trembled as I closed the bag. But my heart felt strangely calm. Like something inside me had already accepted what my mind was still trying to understand. Before leaving the room, I stood near the door. I placed my hand on the doorframe. I had done that many times before, without thinking. That day, I did it with intention. I whispered a prayer, not for myself, for them. I prayed that the house would remain peaceful. That there would be no bitterness. That my leaving would bring them the space they wanted. I did not pray for justice. I did not pray for regret. I walked into the living room with my bag in my hand. My daughter-in-law was standing there. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. Her face showed relief. Not happiness. Just relief. Like a problem had been solved. That hurt. But I did not show it. My son stood near the window. His back was facing me. He was looking outside, pretending to be busy with something. I wondered if he was avoiding my eyes. Or avoiding his feelings. "I'll go now," I said softly. My voice sounded far away, even to me. He turned around slowly. Our eyes met for a brief moment. Just a moment. In that moment, I saw many things. I saw guilt. I saw confusion. I saw discomfort. But I did not see decision. He did not step forward. He did not reach out. He did not stop me. "Take care, Amma," he said. Take care. Those words stayed with me. Not because they were cruel. But because they were final. No hug. No apology. No promise to visit. No words like, "This is temporary." Just, "Take care." I nodded, adjusted my bag, and walked out of the house. I closed the door behind me gently. The sound was soft, almost polite. But inside me, it echoed loudly. It sounded like an ending. Outside, the sky was covered with clouds. A light rain had started falling. Not heavy. Not dramatic. Just steady. Like quiet tears falling from the sky. I walked down the street slowly. I did not know where I was going. My feet moved on their own. My bag felt heavy on my shoulder. Not because of clothes. But because of everything I was carrying inside. Each step felt unfamiliar, like I was learning how to walk again. I reached a small shelter near the road and sat down. I placed my bag beside me and looked ahead. Cars passed by quickly. People walked with umbrellas, talking on phones, laughing, hurrying somewhere important. No one looked at me. No one noticed me. And for the first time, I truly understood what it means to be invisible. I had spent my whole life being needed, being useful, being important to someone, and now, I was just another old woman sitting quietly, waiting for the rain to stop. That night, I stayed with a distant relative. She welcomed me without questions. She gave me a blanket. She gave me warm food. She showed me where to sleep. Her kindness was simple, and because of that, it felt heavy in my heart. I thanked her again and again. Probably more than necessary. She smiled and told me to rest. When I lay down, my body was tired, but my mind would not rest. I stared at the ceiling, listening to unfamiliar sounds. The fan, the clock, the silence. My thoughts returned again and again to one moment. The moment I looked at my son, hoping he would stop me. He did not. That realization settled into my chest like a stone. Heavy, cold, unmoving. In the days that followed, I moved from one relative's house to another. A week here, a few days there, always polite, always careful, always grateful. I washed my own dishes quickly. I folded my bedding neatly. I made myself small. I did not want to overstay. I did not want to become a burden again. I learned how to live lightly. At night, I would sit quietly, thinking about motherhood. About how we give our children roots so they feel safe. And wings so they can fly. But we never expect them to forget the ground they grew from. I did not feel anger. That surprised me. Many people expected it. But anger never came. What came was grief. A deep, quiet grief. Like mourning someone who is still alive. Sometimes, my son would call. The calls were short. "Are you okay?" he would ask. "Yes," I would say. Because what else could I say? I did not want him to feel guilty. I did not want to cry on the phone. I did not want to beg. I had already given everything I had. One evening, as I sat alone, watching the sky grow dark, a thought came to me slowly. I had spent my whole life making space for others. For my husband. For my son. For his happiness. For his family. But I had never made space for myself. That realization hit me harder than being asked to leave. That night, I cried for a long time. Quietly. Deeply. Not just for that day. But for all the days before it. All the times I stayed silent when I wanted to speak. All the times I chose peace over truth. All the times I taught my son, without meaning to, that my needs came last. I understood then that love, when it is always quiet, teaches people to ignore it. That thought hurt more than anything else. But it also freed me. For the first time, I stopped waiting for him to remember me. I stopped hoping he would choose me. I stopped measuring my worth by his attention. I accepted what was. And acceptance, I learned, is not weakness. It is survival. I did not know what the future held. I did not know where I would live permanently. I did not know how my health would hold up. But I knew one thing clearly. I would no longer beg for a place in my own child's life. That chapter had closed. And somewhere, quietly, another one was waiting. After some time, I stopped moving from one house to another. I did not say it out loud, but inside, I knew it was time. I could see the discomfort in people's eyes, even when their words were kind. They welcomed me, they fed me, they spoke gently. But I could also see the unspoken question behind their smiles. How long will she stay? I never blamed them. Everyone has their own lives. Their own routines. Their own worries. Space is not just physical. It is emotional too. And I understood that better than anyone. I had spent my whole life adjusting. I knew when to step back. So I decided to find a place of my own. Not a big place. Not a comfortable place. Just a place where I could breathe without feeling like I was taking someone else's air. That is how I found the small room near the temple. It was tucked away on a quiet street. The kind of street people pass without noticing. The building was old. The paint was faded. But the door closed properly, and the window let in light. That was enough. The room had one small window. One narrow bed. A tiny corner where I could cook simple food. No decorations. No extra space. But when I stood there alone for the first time, holding my bag, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The first night I stayed there alone, the silence felt different. It was not heavy. It did not press against my chest. It did not remind me of what I had lost. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that listens instead of judging. I unpacked my bag slowly. There was no rush. No one waiting for the room. No one watching. I placed my husband's picture near the window, where the morning light would touch his face. I wiped the frame gently with my dupatta, the way I had always done. I folded my clothes neatly and placed them in the small cupboard. Each shelf filled quickly. I did not have much. And for the first time, that did not bother me. I sat on the bed and looked around. This place did not know my past. It did not know my sacrifices. It did not know my mistakes. And somehow, that felt peaceful. My days slowly found a rhythm. I began waking up early, before the sun rose fully. The temple bell became my alarm. I washed my face, sat quietly, and prayed. Not long prayers. Simple ones. Thanking God for another day. Asking for calm. I cooked simple food. Rice. Lentils. Sometimes vegetables. Sometimes just tea and bread. I ate slowly, without rushing, without waiting for anyone else. Some days, I helped at the temple. I swept the floors. I cleaned utensils. I arranged flowers. No one asked me why I was there. No one asked about my past. They just accepted my presence. I was not paid much. Sometimes not at all. But I did not need much either. I had learned how little a person truly needs to survive. Food, shelter, a little kindness. In the evenings, I sat near the window and watched people pass by. Families walking together, children running ahead, mothers holding small hands, calling out gently. Sometimes it hurt. Sometimes it warmed me. I let both feelings exist. My son called less often. At first, I noticed. I checked the phone more than I should have. I wondered if he would call today. Or tomorrow. Or at all. Then one day, I stopped counting. When he did call, our conversations were short. Polite. Careful. Are you eating properly? He asked once. Yes, I said. That was enough for him. I realized then that he believed caring was asking questions, not being present. Maybe that was how he had learned love from me. I had always asked if he ate. If he was warm. If he was safe. Maybe I had taught him that love lives in words, not actions. That thought stayed with me for a long time. Slowly, my body adjusted to the new routine. My legs still ached sometimes. My back still hurt. But my days felt lighter. My heart took longer. There were nights when memories came back strongly. Uninvited. Loud in the quiet room. The sound of my son's laughter when he was small. His small hand slipping into mine without asking. The way he used to search for me in a crowd, his eyes scanning until they found mine. I would close my eyes and let those memories come. I did not push them away. Pain deserves acknowledgement too. One afternoon, I fell ill. Nothing serious. Fever. Weakness. My body felt heavy, like it did not want to move. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the fan turn slowly. I wondered what would happen if something worse came. If I could not get up. If I could not cook. If I could not speak. There was no fear, just acceptance. That surprised me. A woman from the temple noticed I had not come for 2 days. She came to check on me. She brought food. She sat beside me for a while. She spoke about small things. The weather. The temple. Nothing important. She did not know my story. She did not need to. Kindness does not require history. As days passed, I started noticing myself again. My thoughts, my feelings, my quiet strength. I had lived my whole life defined by my roles. Wife, mother, caretaker. Now, I was just me. That felt strange and freeing. I began enjoying small things. Warm tea in the morning. Clean floors. The sound of bells. Helping someone without expecting anything in return. I stopped expecting my son to change. Expectations, I learned, are heavy things. You carry them quietly, but they weigh you down. When you finally put them down, you feel lighter, even if nothing else changes. One evening, my son visited. I was surprised to see him standing at the door. He looked around my small room slowly. His eyes moved from the bed to the window to the small cooking corner. He looked confused, maybe shocked. "Why didn't you tell me you were living like this?" he asked. I smiled gently, not sadly, not bitterly, just gently. "You never asked," I said. He looked uncomfortable. He said, "You could have stayed with us." I did not argue. I did not remind him of the day I was asked to leave. I did not bring up the silence. I simply said, "This place suits me." He nodded, but his eyes did not understand. Before leaving, he touched my feet. A gesture of respect. A habit taught long ago. It felt late, but I accepted it. When the door closed behind him, I waited. I waited for tears. I waited for pain. I waited for regret. None came. That was when I knew I had healed more than I thought. I had forgiven him, not because he asked, but because carrying resentment would have tied me to the past. I did not want to live there anymore. I wanted to move forward. I prayed for him every day. Not for his success, not for his wealth, but for his awareness. For his heart to stay open. For him to remember kindness before it is too late. Some lessons take time. Some lessons take loss. I was no longer waiting to be remembered. I was living. And that, I learned, is a kind of victory. Life has a quiet way of teaching us lessons. Not through loud arguments. Not through sudden storms. But through stillness. Through days that look ordinary from the outside. Days where nothing dramatic happens. Days where you wake up, do your work, eat your food, and go to sleep again. And yet, somewhere inside, something is changing. Through nights when the world becomes quiet, and your thoughts become loud. Nights when you sit alone and think about everything that was once certain, and everything that will never be again. I have been living in my small room for some time now. Long enough for my footsteps to feel familiar on the floor. Long enough to know which corner catches the morning light. Long enough for it to feel like home. The walls are plain. The paint has faded. The furniture is old and simple. There is nothing here that would impress anyone. But this space holds my peace. And peace, I have learned, is more valuable than comfort. Every morning, I wake up before sunrise. Not because I have to. But because my body has learned this rhythm. I wash my face with cold water. I sit near the window. And I watch the sky slowly change its color. Dark blue becomes lighter. Gray turns into soft orange. Night becomes morning. I pray then. Not with urgency, not with desperation, but with gratitude. I thank life for letting me breathe another day. For letting my legs carry me. For letting my hands still work. Even when my body feels weak, I am grateful that I can still stand on my own feet. Sometimes, as I sit there, my thoughts drift toward my son. Not with anger, not even with sadness anymore. Just with acceptance. He has his life now. His responsibilities. His world. His choices. I was once the center of his world. The person he needed for everything. The voice he looked for in a crowd. Now, I am a memory he visits sometimes. People say this is the natural order of things. That children grow up and move on. That parents must learn to step back. Maybe it is. But there is something no one tells mothers. No one tells us that loving deeply also means learning how to step back without disappearing. No one teaches us how to slowly loosen our grip without losing ourselves. And when you are never taught how to do that, the fall feels sudden. One day you are needed. The next day, you are in the background. And no one explains when that change happened. I do not regret loving my son the way I did. I do not regret the sacrifices. I do not regret choosing him over myself again and again. Love given honestly is never a mistake. But if I could speak to my younger self, I would tell her something gently. Not as a warning, but as care. I would say, do not make yourself invisible in the name of love. Because children learn how to treat us by watching what we accept. When we teach them, through our silence, that our needs do not matter, they grow up believing that. Not because they are cruel, but because they never learned otherwise. I see many mothers now. In the temple, on the street, in quiet corners of homes. Women who gave their entire lives to their children. Women who stopped asking for anything. Women who learned to smile through loneliness. Now, they sit quietly, waiting to be remembered. To them, I want to speak softly. The way I wish someone had spoken to me. You are not weak because you feel pain. You are not selfish for wanting respect. And you are not wrong for expecting kindness. If your child has forgotten you, it does not erase the years you spent loving them. It does not take away your worth. It does not make your sacrifices meaningless. Some bonds change, some distances grow, but your life does not end there. I have learned to fill my days with small joys. Very small ones. The kind people often ignore. Warm tea in the morning. A clean floor. A gentle smile from a stranger. A quiet prayer that brings calm instead of answers. I help others when I can. I rest when I need to. I no longer apologize for being tired. Peace, I learned, is not something someone gives you. It is something you choose. My son still calls sometimes. Our conversations are gentle, polite, limited. We talk about health, about weather, about small things. I do not ask for more. I no longer expect him to become the boy he once was. People change. Love changes. But dignity should not. This is not a story of blame. I do not tell it to point fingers. I do not tell it to make anyone feel guilty. It is a story of realization. That a mother's love should not cost her self-respect. That letting go can sometimes be the kindest thing you do for yourself. And that even when you are forgotten by the people you raised, you are still whole. If you are listening to this and feel a quiet ache in your chest, please know this. You are seen, even if no one has said it to you. You matter, even if your phone stays silent. And it is never too late to choose yourself. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in peace. I close my eyes at night with a calm heart. Not because everything turned out the way I hoped, but because I learned how to live with grace, even when life took a different path. I learned that strength does not always look like standing tall. Sometimes, it looks like sitting quietly and still choosing to live fully. This is my story, not a story of loss, but a story of strength found in silence. And if there is one lesson I leave behind, it is this. Love others deeply, give freely, care honestly, but never forget yourself.